This is Duke University.
Good morning. Only 15 minutes late. That's pretty good. My name is Tony O'Driscoll. I'm Executive Director of the Center for Technology, Entertainment, and Media. And I'm joined by colleagues here, Jonathan Cummings, who's our Faculty Director, Alex Navid, who's the whole reason that this has come together. Unfortunately, she's still outside waiting for folks to come in. Myself and Youngmi Kim, who's our postdoc. And we're the Four Musketeers. And what we're really interested in is future of enterprise and what leadership looks like when you're facing into very uncertain headwinds, and how we deal with ambiguity, and how decisions are made, and what role technology has to play in it. And the reason that we're focusing on technology, entertainment, and media is because we believe that at the intersection of those three is where the most change is happening. And if we can focus and study quite intently at that intersection, we can start to understand what the next generation leadership principles might be, or what the next generation management practices might be, because I think we can all see that business, whatever business you're in, is becoming more digital, and when it becomes more digital and more connected, it becomes more complex, and when it becomes more complex, you have a series of decisions to make if you have responsibility for shareholder value, and the job becomes tougher. I was just in a session yesterday, and an executive, I think, articulated very well, where he said that the mean time between decisions, board-level decisions, is shrinking dramatically. Used to be we'd make one bet every 3-4 years, we'd bring it up to the board, and then we kind of watch and see it unfold. And the second and paradoxical situation is, as those decisions are shrinking, the amount of information that surrounds each decision is expanding infinitely. So you've got this duality of many more decisions to make that are bet the farm decisions, and a whole bunch more information to make sense of in order to make the right decision, and that causes us angst. Daryl Connor, not related, or is he? No. Has a great saying that says, pain without alternatives creates ulcers. And I think there's a fair amount of that going on right now. And those of us who've been playing this knowledge management game for quite some time, and looking at how it is people make decisions and interact with each other, it's kind of like the same movies playing over and over again, but there's new versions of technology coming along. But at the core, it's the right person, right set of people, right content, right context to make the right decision at the right time. We've been saying that for 20 years. So what's different now? That's what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. Okay, so the first thing is welcome. Second thing is thank you very much to Cisco for sponsoring this. Sheila Jordan will be here later on today, giving the kind of, so you really want to do this, here's what it's going to take, and you better strap yourself in, because this is not for the faint of heart. We'll be also be hearing from Sandy Carter from IBM on that. And the second and most important thing is our hashtag is Immersion Day. Hashtag Immersion Day. So tweet at will, tweet often, stuff the ballot box. It's not illegal in this context. And let's see if we can't get a trend going here in terms of what's being talked about. All right? That's the first point. Now, I've talked about the purpose of CTEM. What we're really doing and what's happening today is the first part. We want to catalyze interactions between industry thought leaders, leading researchers, and engaged students. This forum is about folks who have a common interest around the notion of social business, what's going to happen when business gets social. And our agenda, one of the beautiful things about a university is we have great convening power. We have the opportunity to convene people from different walks of life, and with the opportunity to have authentic conversation about what's going on here. And that's our goal today as it relates to social business. In terms of our kind of mission, we have a three-pronged mission. One is about getting real live education out there to the students that talks about what's happening today in business. I think oftentimes when we use traditional case studies, they are very useful for a kind of pedagogical purpose in terms of explaining a particular theory and how it might work. But the further we're getting into the technology, entertainment, and media space, we want more relevancy. We want to bring more relevance into the conversation in the classroom. We want to bring more people who are dealing with real issues into the classroom, because students enjoy that engagement and it brings the learning to life. So that's one of our goals. The second is to do some path-breaking research in these new and emerging areas. And we've got a good obviously at Duke, we've got multidisciplinary researchers, and we're trying to look at new intersections that warrant investigation, not unlike a lot of the stuff that Dave Millen will be talking about today. And the last is outreach. I mean, one of the core values of Duke University is knowledge in service of society. So the outreach piece is all of this is going out to Ustream. All of this, for those who are willing, it will be taped and it will be available. So what we want to do is kind of propagate knowledge and have people participate, maybe not synchronously here today, but that information is available to them in the future. A couple of different stories about how are we doing so far. CTEM is literally all of 8 months old, Center for Technology, Entertainment, and Media. On the student side, we've had a lot of activity. We had a great, during the breaks, the student clubs. Fuqua is very club-oriented. 3 clubs that are quite involved with us are the Technology, Entertainment, and Media Club, the Media, Entertainment, and Sports Club, and then the General Management Club. Those clubs are quite interested in what we're doing here. As a matter of fact, as soon as I leave here at 5:30 today, I'm going to a Media, Entertainment, and Sports session from 6:30 to 8:30, where we're talking about how do you negotiate contracts for sports for the Pac-10. How does the business of sports work? How complex is it to negotiate a deal, which I think is very germane and timely given the NBA lockout and what's going on there today. All my son wants to know is when he's going to get to see his favorite Duke players play pro. It's like, why aren't they playing yet, Daddy? Isn't the season supposed to start? I'm like, well, it's complicated. And that's what we'll be talking about later this afternoon, not in this session, but in another one. On the research side, our first kind of stream of research focused on social production. And that's a Yochai Benkler term, where we're trying to figure out why do all these people in the Fedora community who work for IBM or Microsoft or insert IT company here, in their spare time not go home and watch American Idol? Why instead do they go home, get on their computer, and start banging bits again? What is the underlying value system that drives them to want to participate in a collective, in a community, so that they're essentially doing work, but they feel differently about it? So we were fortunate enough through our relationship with Red Hat to get access to the Fedora development community and ask them, what do you value about the community? What kind of practices do you engage in when you've got a collective? How does work get done? Code get shipped? I mean, you don't have a boss. How does all that work? And then tools. What kind of tooling do you use to kind of manage this distributed work? And we had some success with that study, and the cool thing about doing academic research is the non-obvious emerges, and we can talk more about that later. But we said, okay, now we want to take our findings and we're going to do it with the Eclipse community. So again, we had the opportunity to go into the Eclipse community, which is yet another kind of collective that develops code. And we essentially ran a very similar study to see values, practices, and tools and where they compare and contrast. And Jonathan and I are in the process of trying to find time to put that together. Now, the reason we're here and the reason we're having a social business conversation is because that is really pulsating at this point in time. We're started just work with IBM, looking at what IBM is doing in terms of social business and how it's propagating through the organization. And we're doing a very large study with Cisco that's NSF funded, where we're going to be taking like a 2-year view of that organization's propagation of social business, and seeing where it's being adopted, how it's being adopted, how it's influencing work routines. This area is hot. This area is very, very hot. So that's where we're focused right now, is in this area. Ari Lewin, who couldn't be here today, he is very involved in Org Science, which is a very prominent journal. We're actually, for the Org Science Winter Conference in February in Steamboat, Colorado, the whole thing is about social business. And this is convening academics from all kinds of disciplines to come together and converge and have a conversation about that. So I'm really looking forward to that one as well. In many ways, this is the kind of corporate entryway into that academic set of discussions. And then in terms of outreach, we had a fantastic inaugural immersion day where we were looking at disruptive business models, and we were talking about music, and we were talking about movies and where things are going. And this is our second one of the year. So I'd like to welcome you all. I'm almost done. I know I'm just content free, but you have to stick with me for one more chart. The other thing around social business is David Kirkpatrick's a friend of mine, and in fact I'll be seeing him this weekend, and he wrote this article in Forbes. I don't know how many of you saw it, Social Power in the Corporate Revolution, and he starts out with the whole notion of the role that social had in in Tunisia and Egypt and so on and so forth. But then he started interviewing folks like Gary Hamel, and he started interviewing folks like Mark Benioff, and they were saying, well, you know, it's not about the Arab street, it's about the corporate street. And if I dovetail kind of David's argument that says, wow, you know, there's something happening here, with Ari Lewin's argument that says, you mean to tell me that Dell has just turned on Chatter for 100,000 people? You mean to tell me that IBM is just saying, go for it with IBM Connections? You mean to tell me that Cisco has turned on Quad for 60,000 people and that they're all connected now? I mean, have they paused to consider? And Gary Hamel, who always likes to be provocative, is, you know, CEOs could be like Mubarak. What if people want to leverage this technology in different ways? So the unanticipated consequences of bringing social in, and then the different underlying motivations, profit versus purpose. So it got us really curious. And what I'm really, really pleased to say is I think we've got a dynamite set of speakers who are going to talk about this thing from 5 different perspectives. Okay? Marcia and Andrea are going to come in and they're going to just tell us what the heck is this thing, so we get our definitions down and straight, so we know what we're talking about, what it is and what it isn't. Because I think some of this suffers from what I might call kitchen sinkness. Do you know what I mean by that? It's everything and it's nothing. So let's get clear on that. And then we're going to talk about trends and patterns. What are we seeing? Where is it being adopted? So Michael and Carol are going to talk about what they're seeing. So we got the McKinsey point of view, the Gartner point of view. They have a lot of data. They've been observing this for quite some time, and they're going to share their insight with us then. So that's kind of good. That's the morning. And we're going to kind of say, okay, we know what it is, and we kind of see where it's hot, heat maps, and so on and so forth. After lunch, we're going to get a bit more on the behavioral side. So what is it like to be in one of these things as a human being? And David Millen, I'm very excited that David's here. I've known David for years at IBM. David does research into all of these technologies and has been doing it for years. So you're going to get a real bird's eye view, if you will, of what it's like to live in a digital surround that's socially enabled. And then Alan Morrison has just finished a big technology forecast review, and he's going to kind of give us a summary of what he's seen from a kind of behavioral perspective and share 3 case studies of what's been observed. By that time, you should be foaming at the mouth to want to do this. So then the question becomes, okay, you sold me, what do I do? And that's where we start to scare you with this is not for the faint of heart. There's a pretty large change management process with it. There's a pretty large technological implementation piece. And who better than Cisco and IBM to have that conversation from the people who are responsible for doing that? So we have Sandy Carter and Sheila Jordan. And then we kind of round out the day with the art of the possible and what a real social business looks like, with what I think are 2 really exemplary stories of the power of positive example of what it can really look like and what it can do. So starting with definitions and ending with possibilities. That's the agenda.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.